Here are 5 ways the world might change after Russia's war on Ukraine. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, lesson number 452. You can find the full lesson at plainenglish.com/452. We prepare these lessons in advance, so I can't talk about the very latest to have happened in Ukraine, but I think we can talk about 5 things in the world that might change as a result of this war, however it ends. And those 5 things are the topic of today's lesson. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you how to use the English expression set your sights on something, and we have a quote of the week. Let's get started. Let's start with Russia's image in the world. Russia has a massive army, a large population, natural resources, and a stockpile of nuclear weapons. What's more, the Russian military had a track record. In 2008, it occupied parts of the Republic of Georgia, and the world barely lifted a finger in opposition. Then, Russia snapped off a piece of Ukraine in 2014, again without repercussions. The Russian government shot down a civilian airplane over Ukraine's airspace. It poisoned political opponents in the UK, and Russia got away with it all. Next, it set its sights on Ukraine. Whatever the eventual outcome of this war, Russia's air of invincibility has been shattered. The first week didn't go well. Photos of destroyed Russian equipment circulated around the world on social media. Ukraine scrambled up an army of civilians and soldiers who held the major cities. Financial sanctions were strong, and Western governments were sending help. Russian casualties started mounting. This war will have many terrible consequences. Having failed to topple the government in the first weeks of war, Russia turned to bombing maternity wards and evacuation routes, but it is no longer feared like it once was. The second change has to do with supply chains. In the last 20 or 30 years, companies have sought to produce products where it made the most economic sense. That's why supply chains have gotten so complicated. The complexity makes economic sense. But conducting business worldwide just got a lot riskier. Many companies will begin looking at how they make their products, and they'll begin looking to produce more of them in more stable countries. Governments will also help them along. This is already happening with microchips. A large percentage of semiconductors are made in Taiwan, which, incidentally, has its own risks. China has claimed Taiwan as part of its own territory. Coaxed on by the U.S. government, Intel announced a major microchip plant in the state of Ohio. The European Commission is allocating 11 billion euros to help make chips in Europe. The same might happen with medical devices. Manufacturers can expect to try to make more of their goods inside their home markets or at least nearby. This can help hollowed out manufacturing regions like the Midwest in the US. It can also help markets that are adjacent to big economies like Mexico and Eastern Europe. But overall, the reduction in trade and the reduction in trust will make the whole world economically worse off. Next up, alternate payment systems. Soon after Russia's invasion, Western countries banded together to release a package of economic sanctions, basically restrictions on how Russia and Russian entities could interact with the world financial system. These sanctions were a body blow to the Russian economy. You have to believe that the rest of the world's autocrats took notice. A lot of smaller countries are not politically aligned with the West, but they use Western financial systems anyway. Nicaragua, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela come to mind. They probably never thought their whole economies could be ruined by financial sanctions. But now, they're probably looking nervously on at Russia's isolation and wondering if the same thing could happen to them someday. As it happens, China is developing its own payments system. It even has a competing version of SWIFT, the bank-to-bank messaging system. China would love for more of the world's transactions to be in yuan rather than dollars or euros. And unlike Europe or the US, China doesn't get hung up on things like human rights or invasions. The crypto world, too, is salivating over the opportunity to provide an alternative to the existing financial infrastructure. Even before the war, El Salvador planned its own crypto route around Western financial sanctions, as you learned in Lesson 406. Here's one more. On defense, Europe has finally woken up from its slumber. The European Union is, at its heart, a peace project. The founders believed that countries linked together by trade and politics would be less likely to fight each other. And it has worked. Europe has enjoyed peace for 3/4 of a century. But the problem is, the rest of the world is not playing along. The economic and diplomatic overtures to Russia have not worked, and Europe has found its defenses woefully unprepared. Russia's naked aggression in Ukraine may be the jolt European leaders need to get serious about their own defense. Ukraine shares a border with 4 European Union countries: Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania. Russia could be coming for the EU next. France's Emmanuel Macron has repeatedly said that Europe should have a common defense policy so that it's not as reliant on the US for its defense. It was unthinkable just weeks ago, but now, with Germany's recent pivot, it's a real possibility. One more for you. The term Londongrad refers to the warm welcome that London has given Russian oligarchs, and not just oligarchs, but wealthy people from around the world who may have made their money in unsavory ways. London has offered them a safe place to park their wealth, incorporate their businesses, and clean up their reputations. With a small, and for them it is small, £2 million investment, foreign tycoons could buy official UK residency. From there, it was a few short steps to a Western lifestyle and a more or less respectable reputation. Roman Abramovich is a perfect example. He is the Russian billionaire owner of the Chelsea Football Club, and he's learning that Britain is having a change of heart. In the second week of the war, he announced he would be putting his stake in Chelsea up for sale, and he'd use the proceeds to help the victims of the war. But he didn't specify whether those victims would be Russian or Ukrainian. But on March 11th, the UK sanctioned him. His stake in Chelsea was therefore frozen. It's now illegal for British businesses to do business with him. Sponsors, merchandise sales, ticket sales were all frozen. Oligarchs are smart. Many of them have stashed their wealth out of the reach of Western sanctions. But this could mark the end of Londongrad, or Britain's acceptance of dirty money from abroad. We could be watching a complete reordering of how the world works. All these oil companies abandoning Russia, just Russia disconnecting from the world economy, and then everyone scrambling to figure out where they'll get their energy from, their food from, if it can't come from Russia any longer. There's never been a time of total peace in the world, but the last 30 years have been relatively safe and secure and prosperous, and that run might be coming to an end. We might be going into another paranoid, polarized era like the Cold War. Today's English expression is to set your sights on something. You'll want to use this phrase when you have an ambition or when you want to achieve something. If you really want to do something, you've set your sights on achieving it. This phrase originates with imagery of shooting. A sight, is the part of a gun that you look through as you set your aim. If you're hunting and you set your sight on, say, a turkey, then you've aimed your gun at that turkey. Most of the time, though, we use this metaphorically. In today's lesson, I said Russia set its sights on Ukraine, and that meant that Russia had ambitions in Ukraine. I didn't say specifically what Russia's ambitions were because that's still not known, but I said that Russia had taken over territory from the Republic of Georgia in 2008 and from the Crimea region of Ukraine in 2014. It killed opponents abroad, it shot down an airline, and then it set its sights on Ukraine again. It had ambitions there. And the imagery of a hunter finding his target through the sight of a gun is not a bad way to think about this phrase in this case. Now, it doesn't always have to be about violence, though. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't involve any type of violence. Here are a few peaceful examples. ESPN is a major broadcaster of American sports, but its American football broadcast has been awful in the past few years. I personally think it's unwatchable. ESPN carries the Monday Night Football game. The Monday night game, and there's only one per week. It used to be the most prestigious game of the whole week. But ESPN's broadcast is so bad that now the Sunday night game is considered the most prestigious game and gets higher ratings. Well, ESPN is going to broadcast the Super Bowl for the first time in 2027. They wanted to prepare by improving the quality of their broadcasts. So they set their sights on Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. Aikman and Buck were both at Fox, a competing network. But ESPN wanted them. ESPN set its sights on both broadcasters. And ESPN got them both, so I might finally watch a Monday Night Football game again. Joe Biden became president in January 2021 at age 78. He finally reached his goal. But he set his sights on the presidency as a much younger man. That means he made it his goal to be president a long time ago. He first ran for president in 1988, more than 30 years ago. He tried again in 2008. And finally, he won in 2020. But he had the presidency in his sights for over 30 years. Silicon Valley is full of ambitious entrepreneurs. Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, set his sights on disrupting the hospitality business. I think we can say he achieved that ambition. Elizabeth Holmes set her sights on revolutionizing blood testing, but that one didn't work out as well. Here's a quote for today in these uncertain times. True security lies in the unrestrained embrace of insecurity, in the recognition that we never really stand on solid ground and never can. It's by Oliver Burkeman, a British journalist. I don't know if this makes me feel better or worse, but if you want the world to stay the same, you're going to have a hard time being happy. It seems like one global calamity after another. A financial crisis, a pandemic, now a war in Europe. I can't believe I'm saying the words war in Europe, but I am. Anyway, here's the quote again. True security lies in the unrestrained embrace of insecurity, in the recognition that we never really stand on solid ground and never can. And that's all for today's lesson. We'll take a break from this topic for the next few lessons, but we'll revisit it in a couple of weeks when hopefully the situation has changed for the better. Until then, remember, we're here every Monday and Thursday with a new plain English lesson. See you soon.